All right, so here's where I tell you that what was covered in the last segment is not 100% true, right? I told you that angles with terminal sides in the first quadrant are between 0 and 90, second quadrant 90 to 180, so on and so forth. But now we find that that's not 100% true, right? Now you might have already suspected that from the previous video where we had talked about positive and negative angles, right? Because obviously I can also go clockwise, right, instead of counterclockwise. So right here, this angle here that I've created is a negative angle. So how is this negative angle somewhere between 270 and 360, right? It isn't, okay? So this is where you bring in the idea of coterminal angles, right? And we can actually use this one that I have here as the example, right? This would be a negative angle, right? However, if I rotated this way, counterclockwise, I would end up at a positive angle, and it would have the same terminal side, right? So this positive angle here, the one in red, and this negative angle, the one in blue, actually have the same terminal side, right? And that's what it means to be coterminal angles. So these two angles that I've written here are called coterminal angles because they have the same terminal side. Now the question would be, well, by how much do they differ, right? This one we said is somewhere between 270 and 360. So let's, for argument's sake, let's say this one is, I don't know, it looks like it's probably about 310 degrees, right? So if this one is 310 degrees, right, and the negative one is coterminal with it, if you connect this red line with this blue line, right, you formed a complete circle. So this should be a total of 360. But here, since I went clockwise, this is actually a negative angle. And what's the difference between 310 and 360? It would be 50. So this is actually this would then be a negative 50 degrees, right? Because again, just count off by 90s. Up here, up top, you'd have 90. Then over here, you'd have 180. Down here, you'd have 270. So then this little space in here, this would be 40, because to get from 270 to 310, you need 40 more. So then this would be another 50 here, right? Because this would create the 90 degrees in here. All right. So this is a 310 degree angle. This is a negative 50 degree angle. And by how much do they differ? Well, they differ by 360 degrees, right? Because if I take 310 and I subtract 360, I end up with negative 50 degrees. Okay? Or going the other way, if I have negative 50 degrees and I add 360 degrees to it, I end up with 310 degrees. So right here, what I've written is the key to creating coterminal angles. How can you create coterminal angles? You simply add or subtract 360 degrees, of course, if it's in degrees, or if it's in radians, you add or subtract 2 pi radians. Okay? So if I had, do one in radians now. This angle here, which I'm going to call pi over 3 radians. How could I create coterminal angles with that? I would do pi over 3 plus 2 pi. And I don't expect you to be real good at this yet, but when you get into pre-calculus, you know, the trig in pre-calculus, you got to be able to do this fairly quickly. When you're adding pi over 3 and 2 pi, what you got to do is you got to treat 2 pi as if it's thirds, right? So 2 pi, if I wrote it as thirds, would actually be 6 pi over 3. So this is really saying pi over 3 plus 6 pi over 3. So then I get 7 pi over 3. So that would be a coterminal angle with pi over 3. And I could also subtract 2 pi. So here I'd be doing pi over 3 minus 6 pi over 3, which would be negative 5 pi over 3. So what would 7 pi over 3 be? Well, it would just be 1 full time around the circle and then an extra pi over 3. So that green angle that I wrote there, where I wrapped around completely once and then an additional pi over 3, that would be my 7 pi over 3. And what would negative 5 pi over 3 be? It would be this one, where I rotate clockwise 5 pi over 3. So this is actually negative 5 pi over 3. So are those the same angle? Depends on what you mean by that, right? They're coterminal angles because they share the same terminal side, but they actually have different angle measures, right? One would be pi over 3, one would be 7 pi over 3, and one would be negative 5 pi over 3. But those are coterminal angles. And of course, I mean, I can keep wrapping around as many times as I want, right? So I mean, I can create another angle here where I go 1, 2, and then another 1/3, and that would actually be pi over 3 plus 2 pi plus another 2 pi, right, which is plus 4 pi, because I wrapped around twice, okay? And that angle there would actually be 13 pi over 3, right, because it's 12 pi over 3 plus another pi over 3. Right? So I can create an infinite number of coterminal angles.